Hey everybody, I hope you're well. I never had a proper coming out. And what I mean by that is I was one of the lucky ones, or people would look at me and think that I was one of the lucky ones. I have a fantastic family who accepted who I was. My parents pretty much told me I was gay. And my brothers were completely accepting, I remember, and that was the attitude of my family, and I was delighted to have that, even though, my father was a conservative, so was my mother, but he was a conservative, but when it came to social issues, he wasn't, and it wasn't something that it wasn't really on his radar, but it didn't bother him one way or the other. Friends, when I came out to them, it was the same sort of deal. It was like, yeah, we know, who cares, So it's brilliant that that's how I have lived my life since. So I've never had any, like, touch wood and please gods, I've never had any trouble about being a gay man or about being gay. But I do sort of have this, I suppose shopper's remorse, if you like, because I hear so many stories on here, doing these little talks and posts, so many stories about people who have the most horrific coming out stories, and people who have to leave their homes and their parents don't accept them, and they get beaten up and they get abused and all that, and it's so horrific. That sometimes I think to myself, like, and I know my friends, out of my group of friends, I know, one of my friends didn't come out till his, late 30s because he was just too ashamed to come out to his incredibly religious father, who has now disowned him. Or, you've other friends of mine who have been bullied all the way through school and had the most horrific experiences. And, I didn't have that. I was very much, I loved school. I was in a cool clique, and I really enjoyed school, and it was never a problem to be gay. I never got bullied, really. I never really had any problems. So when I look at people on here, I've been watching loads and loads of YouTube videos and lots of podcasts because of lockdown. I've been walking the dog, listening to podcasts, and I've come across some really interesting podcasts. And one particular one that sort of made me think about doing this it's called Latter Gay Podcast. Isn't that the one? It's called Latter Gay Stories, and I'll put the link underneath here. And it's about Mormonism, and it's about the L.D.S. Church of Latter-day Saints. And it's about, the men that have gone through that and have come out the other side, have been born into the Mormon Church, which is an organized religion, obviously, which is Orthodox. It would be an Orthodox religion. It's very strict, and you live by the Bible and by the Book of Mormon, and it just is so a million miles away from who and what I am. And I've been listening to this really interesting podcast. If you want to have a listen to it, if you're interested in this, I suggest you listen. And it's by a guy called, the presenter is Kyle Ashworth, and he's really, really good. And stories all are based around the society. They're based around, they're the organized religion, and how, these men had to absolutely repress themselves so much that it got to the point where they wanted to kill themselves, or where they just couldn't go on. And when they're telling these stories, they're all sort of very, very similar stories. They're all like that. They're all, they end up, just wanting to please their families, please people, please their church. They go on their mission, and they want to do well there. They want to be, all of them, pretty much all these guys are, they're the perfect model Mormon, because they're covering up this thing that's deep inside them that they will never let out, because they know that it's wrong, and that it's like one of the biggest sins that you could have in this church is to be gay. And a lot of the guys who are giving their stories and who are so eloquent, and I'm so delighted that they found who they are and what they're about. They finally get out of the situation that this church puts them in, and they find love, or they find acceptance in themselves, and they love themselves eventually. But to the stuff that they go through, some of them are just so horrific, and the dilemmas that they have inside them, and what they put themselves through, to get to a point where pretty much all of them get to a point where they're like suicide. And it's just so sad to hear that. There's a couple who, two men who are in their 50s and are late 40s, early 50s, who came out maybe about 3 years before, and they've lived a whole life, and they end up marrying. Pretty much all of the guys in this in the podcast end up marrying, because they seem to marry very early, at a young age. After their mission, they marry. And I just was listening to all these stories, and the one thing that really got me was I felt so sorry for the women who they marry, who are brought into this false marriage because a hierarchy and a church basically says it's wrong for the men they marry to be who they have to be. And I just feel so sorry for them. And the reason, they don't talk about it really in a lot of the talks. They don't really talk about that side of it. They talk more about the journey of the man, which of course is really important. But they don't talk about the poor girl's journey. I'd love to know from their point of view what happened, and how they were after their husbands who they loved eventually came out to them. And I suppose, these girls would have been incredibly curtained. They wouldn't know the world at all. They would be very closeted in their society, and they wouldn't know the ways of the world. And this was their whole entire life. This was the way it was all going to be mapped out for them. They were going to go, be good people in the church, be good people to their God, have children, marry, have children, have a man who has a good career. Maybe they have a career as well. And that was their life mapped out. And then this is dropped on them. This bomb is dropped on them. Also, I'm sure they're wondering what the hell's wrong with them. Why doesn't he desire her? Or yes, they may have children, but how many times do you think they had sex? Probably just about the right amount to have children. So they probably felt incredibly undesired, and it must be awful from their point of view. That's what the men all say. They say that they're lovely women and they're fantastic and they love them dearly, but they love them dearly in a platonic way, obviously, because they're gay. But I hope that these women go on to have full lives themselves. But it's a really interesting look at how a religion, an organized religion, can just basically completely ruin your life. I've nothing against religion. I'm not religious myself. Because of all of the crap that goes with the church, and because obviously most organised religions are completely against homosexuality. So why on earth would I go to be in a church that doesn't accept me? But this particular church, the L.D.S. Mormon Church, has extremely strong views on homosexuality. So that's what makes this podcast really, really interesting, because it must be so horrific for these people. And I thought to myself, if I was in the same situation, would I be, you sort of put yourself in their situations, these men's situations, you think to yourself, would I have been and done the same? And the answer is yes, probably I would have, because you don't want to lose your family, you don't want to lose your society, you don't want to lose what you've known your whole entire life, and to come to the conclusion that these guys have come to must have taken an awful lot of courage to do that. And it is just so, some of the stories are so, it's just so deep inside them. It's just, they repress it so much because they're so terrified of what people are going to think. And that I think that's probably the scariest thing for all of us, is what people think of us, are we going to be accepted? So I think to myself, how lucky I am that I have my society accepts me, and my family accepts me, and my friends all accept me, and I have a beautiful husband and a gorgeous little dog and a nice little home, and I'm very lucky to have all of that. And so these feelings of shopper's remorse or gay remorse that I didn't have the big coming out, I don't have them anymore. I'm just happy that I have this, fantastic story of my own, which just was a simple, yes, that's fine. And my coming out should be everybody's coming out. Not my particular story, but the sentiment behind my coming out should be everybody's coming out. It should be something where people just shrug their shoulders and go, who cares? Or another thing I'd like to mention, very good movies, if you're interested in looking at this sort of story, or especially the Mormon gay story, there is a very good film, I'm looking down at my book here, called The Falls, which is a 3-part movie. The first movie is called The Falls, which is 2 boys who are on the mission fall in love, and really brilliantly acted by Benjamin Farmer and Nick Faracini. And I think that's how I pronounce his name, but really good actors, really good movie. First movie, very low budget, you can tell a mile away. Second movie, not so much. First movie was really popular, so second movie has more budget and is really well acted. I mean, the guys are fantastic, and there's a fantastic scene in it where one of the guys fall in love, and then they split up, and then one of them comes out and wants to find out why the other one never came back to him. So the other one marries and leads the LDS life, and he's what I've just talked about. He's got that perfect sort of life. You have the wife, the kid, the really good job, the gorgeous house in Utah, or Salt Lake City, and then one night he's making love to his wife, and obviously he can't get it up, and he's not interested. So she rolls over, goes sleep. He goes into the bathroom, and he starts thinking about. He masturbates, thinking about the love of his life, which is the other guy, and it's just perfect. It shows exactly the repression and how repressed he is, and it's a really good film. And that was movie trilogy, if you're interested in gay Mormons, which I am. So anyway, that's this little talk. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon.